my something function, I want you to convert this to allow for a variable number of arguments. Okay? So use a for loop to loop through the arguments object, adding to a sum variable with each iteration. And after the loop, return the sum. Okay? Does that make sense? All right. I think you've had enough time. Let's see. Let's create another file here. Scratch.js. Okay, and I'll put that down here. Where are we? Yeah. Scratch.js. Okay. All right, folks, what are we going to do here? We want to create a function, right? And what do we want to call it? Something. Okay. So we're giving it a name. This is a function declaration. And so we have our parentheses after it. We start with the function keyword. All right. And then we have square braces, right? No. All right. Curly braces. OK. All right. So now what? What do we do now? For each? Yeah. Yeah, ECMAScript 5 has a for each method, but it probably wouldn't work on the arguments object anyway. So we don't have a for each. We have another kind of loop that's a for loop. Yeah, there we go. OK, so for in. OK, so this is an array-like object. So it has a length, and it's an indexed object, right? And so each argument is going to have an index. So we're not going to use a for in loop. We're just going to use a for loop. Okay. So we want to say for what? For var I equals 0, and then I is less than arguments.length, right? And we want to iterate, increment. We want to increment that by 1 each time. OK. Some people try to be cool, and they'll take this out of here, and they'll stick it like in here for whatever reason. I think it's kind of silly, but OK. Let's see. Now what? We want to log it to the console, right? So how do we do that? Come on, you wrote it already. Tell me. Just tell me what you wrote. How do you log something to the console? Console.log. OK. This is just another function, right? The log is a method of the console object, right? OK. And what are we logging? We're logging this particular argument, right? So arguments I. So each time you go through, so the first time you go through, it's going to be arguments 0, which is the first argument, right? But that's not really what we want. We don't want to just log. We don't want to do this, right? We just want to log the result. So what else do we have to do?
Declare a variable.
OK, great. Declare a variable. And we'll call this sum. And what should we just declare it like that? Equals 0, right. We should start with 0. Yeah. And then each time we go through, for each one, we want to say sum is equal to whatever sum was the last time, right? Or before we looped, in the case of the first iteration, plus arguments. Yeah, so we could use parseInt or parseFloat if we if we didn't trust the person who was calling the function and thought maybe they're going to stick a string in there or something. But let's just pretend that like whoever's using, that you're using this function and that you know that you're going to put numbers in here. Okay. So sum equals sum plus arguments I, right? And then after it finishes looping through each one and adding to what the sum is at each iteration, we can return something. We can return a value, and the value is sum, right? We can return the value of sum there. Now, there's shorthand for doing sum equals sum plus arguments I. Instead of doing this, we can do sum plus equals arguments I. That's the same thing, it's just shorthand. Okay? Does that make sense? We good? Okay, so now if we did, now we're going to call it, so same thing except without the function keyword. Let's say 1, 4, 5, 8, and 15. I don't even know what that is, but let's see, that would be 6, 14, 29. Okay, so let's go to, where are we? .dev/scratch.html. Oh, that's not it. Maybe it's intro. No. What's the matter for you? Let's see. All right. Tell you what, let's just stick it in the console, shall we? Ta-da! Can you see that down there? 29. I was right. Yay. I passed basic math. All right. All right. So does that make sense? Now you know how to use the arguments object, right? Yes? Oh, yeah. So you want to break it? OK. So let's just do it with the last one. Yeah. It's 1415, right? Because it takes whatever was added up so far, the 14, and just tacks 15 onto it, right? So yeah, so you could use parseInt. The problem with parseInt, though, is that what if we have 8.3? And parseInt doesn't work. So what we would need is parseFloat. 29.3. All right, cool.
What if you pass in a string like the words Carl and you have 15?
Oh man. Then you know what it'll do? It'll let's see. Does anybody know? I think I know.
Cast the int to string. Cast the number that it's adding to string.
What does this return?
But Carl isn't a string. Carl isn't. No, it won't do it if I'm parse floating it. What happens when you try to parse float something that isn't a number?
You get an NaN back, not a number.
That's right. You get NaN back, not a number. So that's what you'll have tacked on to the end.
Yeah, cat it on into the back.
What did I just do? Whoops. Wrong key.
Is numeric.
So what you want to do then is you want to check the type of that thing. So you do a type of.
That's right.
String or
Yep. Yeah. And so, right. You could say if it's, if is nan, blah blah blah. Yeah. So you can get very defensive with this, which is a good thing. But for our purposes, we're just showing how to loop through an arguments object, right? Yeah. You're going to start seeing some of these patterns in jQuery. It's kind of like, when you buy a car, all of a sudden everybody is driving the same car. It's like, wow, so many people bought the same cars. You ever have that? Like, same thing here. I think, like, if you familiarize yourself with something, pretty soon, like you're going to start seeing it everywhere, right? That's what I'm hoping.